Good morning. It's good to have you join us on Nigeria Now, showing on your digital first Pan-African news network, that is TOS Television. As always, my name is Merciful Ajunimo. And on the show today to discuss on topics on the newspapers is Felix. You're welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm fine.
Good. So we have a couple of stories this morning. Let's begin with Daily Trust newspaper at the very top. And that's petrol price, NIMASA NPA flouting presidential directive. That's coming from marketers. We can get that story on page 19. The banner headline right there is talking about pension scam. Pensioners chair as Maina bags 61 years imprisonment. We have three riders. The first, act sordid, immoral, dirty, and that's George saying that. Lampoons banks for aiding abetting. Orders convict to refund 2.4 billion naira, forfeit 2 houses, and that's on page 5. Talking about pension scam, this is not the first time we've heard this story. It has come on newspapers before now. And we've seen people, crying that they're being forgotten, they're not being paid their accrued benefit. But now we're seeing Maina bagging years imprisonment. Of course, that's been on this newspaper since yesterday. Now, what do you think of this development?
It's a good development. We have to give it to this government for seeing to the end of this matter. And probably the lawyers, the counsel to Maina might still want to go to court because it's a judgment given by a high court, the federal high court. So probably he might still wants to
take it up with Supreme Court,
probably to the Supreme Court if he so wishes. But the fact is this: those in power, those in government, I think we need more patriotic people than those who goes with self-aggrandizement, those who are selfish, who don't care about what happens to their neighbor. If you see someone like this embezzling over 300 million, seeing like 300 million in his private account, properties all over the world, in the US, in the UK, here in Nigeria, in different places, it doesn't make sense. You are supposed to refund, to reverberate the pension department or the scheme, but you are there to turn everything to yourself. And people that have worked for their country, they're supposed to be paid, you refuse them to get what belongs to them. It doesn't make sense. And if we continue this trajectory, the country is not going to move. But thank God for this one now being serving as a scapegoat to those who still have the intention of doing such a mess, to the country.
All right. Still on the Daily Trust newspaper, we see federal government governors in fresh battle over 172 billion naira Paris Club deductions that can be found on page 7. Supplementary poll, Soludo Ozigbo battle for Ihiala today, that can be found on page 31. And then we see Nigeria's IDP's figure to hit 3 million. That's federal government saying that we can get that story on page 4 of the Daily Trust. Let's quickly go over to the business day. The banner headline there is banks private sector credit up 32.81% in 3 years. We can get all of that story on the Business Day newspaper. The banner headline on the Daily Independent says federal government moves to probe Jonathan's government over PNID contract. The writer there says contracts capable of undermining national economy. This is another big story that we should talk about. Now there's a move by the federal government to probe Jonathan's government over PNID contract. How do you react to this?
It's quite interesting what's coming out of our political terrain. This particular issue started, I think, during Jonathan's regime, and is to rejig and reverberate our electricity. I think that's the basis for coming out with these projects in the first place. Having agreements with a foreign country, and you are entering into agreement and an arbitration that whatever happens, if there is an error between any of the parties, then you go back to UK for an arbitration. You go back to UK court for an arbitration. Who are these people sitting to sign agreements on our behalf? We don't have to, go on all these errors and these mistakes, for crying out loud. Because if you look at the whole thing, there was a judgment that was given the whole thing is that a pipeline was supposed to be built, a plant supposed to be built in Cross River State. The Ministry of Petroleum Resources were supposed to set a pipeline, down to the place that will supply gas. You understand? Then the lean gas will be used to reverberate our electricity.
Yes.
But we renege in our own agreement, and these people took us to arbitration. They tried to settle everything, and at the end of the day, they were able to get almost $10 billion. Please, $10 billion is like almost 3% of our GDP. $10 billion is like 25% of our foreign reserve. This is a country that has not even gotten itself. The budget we have, we borrow money to even service it. And now we are getting this kind of huge debt on our head. For how long are we going to be, are we going to continue in these errors? The wrong people signing the wrong agreement on our behalf. And although Jonathan government tried as much as possible to find a way to bring down, the debt judgment, which is, I think they came up to around almost $1 billion before he left. But that's not $1 million before he left. But it was close to the time that Jonathan was about to leave the scene. So it's like you want to tie him to sign a contract, to sign into something that, is not even able to study very well before leaving the office. And this government came on board. Instead of them to take it over immediately, they refused. Like 6 months, nothing was done. And these things continued to accrue until it got to where we are today. So who are we supposed to blame? Now, the federal government is trying as much. Thank God they've been able to get a court judgment that stop, that at least to just stop the judgment for now. But I can tell you, there is nothing we can do about this thing. We have to pay the debt because we signed to it. This is an agreement we signed to pay. Let me remind you, in 1984, when in 1983/84. If you remember the Lagos rail, the Lagos, what's it called now? The Lagos train that was supposed to be done then. The former governor of Lagos State signed this thing, for a company to do it. But when Buhari took over, he stopped it. Immediately he stopped the project. We've already reneged in our own commitment to that particular project. We had to pay $78 million. $78 million to someone who has done nothing. Is this how we'll continue to waste our resources?
All right, that's so much information right there. I just pick up yourself a copy of the Daily Independent and read about all of this development. Still on the Daily Independent, we see something on Anambra gubernatorial election. INEC adjusts supplementary election time for Ihiala. The writer there says, it's not over yet, says Ozigbo, PDP candidate. Of course, that particular story still is on other newspapers. For the first newspaper, is the banner headline, the Anambra APC may boycott Ihiala supplementary report. Pick yourself a copy of the first newspaper and read about what's happening. On the blueprint, the banner headline there is federal government to use 1.1 billion naira to probe $10 billion PNID contract scam. Of course, that's what we just spoke about just now. We see 2 billion naira pension fraud, Maina to spend 8 years in jail, and that's the court saying that. On the Daily Times, the banner there is $418 million Paris Club payment, Malami working against public interest, and that's coming from the NGF. Two Riders says AGF's actions raises questions of propriety and the spirit of justice. The second, no violation of process, deductions from Paris Club loan reforms ratified by court judgment. Malami replies, just grab yourself a copy of any of these newspapers and just stay updated on happenings across Nigeria and of course across Africa. You can also stay updated on our website, that is www.tostvnetwork.com. And also don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms, that is at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and that is TOSTV Network. Thank you for joining us on the show this morning. Of course, don't forget to always be a part of our social media community. My name is Merciful Ajinable. See you tomorrow.